Hey everyone, come to my channel today. How one specific Blue Lotus flower generates $9.00 in weekly profit the process mystery hook. What if a simple writing technique could revolutionize how you monetize nature? We are deploying the essay strategy to transform stagnant water into a high-demand extraction site for Blue Lotus tinctures. Watch how we time harvest cycles with surgical precision to outperform traditional agriculture and generate massive revenue through concentrated botanical chemistry. Systems for sustainable weekly revenue automating pond nutrient cycles to ensure consistent bloom density every 7 days. Protecting the proprietary essay strategy workflow from local market saturation. Expanding the blueprint to secondary aquatic varieties to double the weekly profit ceiling. How one specific Blue Lotus flower generates $9,000 in weekly profit. Introduction. The flower hiding in plain sight, somewhere in a backyard pond, a plastic tub on a balcony, or a small greenhouse, an ordinary-looking blue flower is quietly turning into one of the most profitable small-scale plant businesses nobody talks about. It's called Blue Lotus, scientifically known as Nymphaea caerulea, and while most people see it as just a pretty water lily, a small group of growers have turned it into a business that can bring in thousands of dollars a week, harvested from nothing more than a pond, a few tubs of water, and consistent sunlight. In this video, we'll break down what Blue Lotus is, why demand for it has grown across the wellness, tea, and botanical industries, how to legally grow it at home even with limited space, how to process and package it so it actually sells, and how the math works out to build a weekly income stream that can scale into the thousands of dollars. This isn't a get-rich-overnight scheme. It's an underrated plant business that rewards patience and consistency over a growing season, and it can be started with very little upfront investment compared to most home business ideas. Stick around until the end, because we'll also cover the legal side of things, the common mistakes beginners make that quietly kill their profit margins, and exactly how to scale from a single backyard tub into a small home-based operation that could realistically supply local shops, online buyers, and wellness brands week after week. What exactly is Blue Lotus? Blue Lotus is a water lily native to the Nile River region in East Africa, historically tied to ancient Egyptian art, ritual, and even burial practices appearing in tomb paintings alongside pharaohs and gods. It has soft blue to violet petals with a bright yellow center and floats on calm, warm water, opening and closing on its own daily cycle rather than staying open around the clock like many other flowering plants. What makes it valuable isn't just its looks, it's the demand for its dried petals. Blue Lotus has long been used in teas, wines, and relaxation rituals, and today it has a strong following in herbal tea, aromatherapy, bath products, and wellness shops. Most Blue Lotus sold online is imported, often inconsistent in quality and slow to arrive. A grower who produces fresh, well-dried, domestic Blue Lotus can charge a premium simply by being local, fresh, and transparent about how the flower was grown and dried, which is something a big overseas supplier usually can't offer. Understanding the market and why demand exists, herbal tea drinkers buy it as a calming, relaxing beverage, often alongside chamomile or valerian, positioned as part of a nightly wind-down ritual. Aromatherapy and bath product makers use dried petals in oils, soaks, and candles for their light floral scent, which blends well with other botanicals in a finished product line. Spiritual and meditation communities value its symbolic tie to Egyptian ritual, using it in incense blends or as a decorative element on altars and in meditation spaces. Specialty smoke shops use it in herbal smoking blends marketed as tobacco alternatives, buying dried material in bulk from small suppliers. Hobbyist pond gardeners buy live tubers and starter plants simply for their beauty, creating a second, completely separate market beyond dried flowers. especially in spring planting season because it isn't widely cultivated at scale in most Western countries. Small growers can position themselves as a rare, reliable, domestic source and price accordingly. Buyers in this niche also tend to value transparency, wanting to know who grew the flower and how it was dried, which is an advantage a small backyard operation has over a faceless importer. Is Blue Lotus legal to grow and sell? Blue Lotus is legal to grow, buy, and sell in most countries, including the US, Canada, the UK, and most of the EU, typically labeled for aromatic or ornamental use rather than as food or a drug. A few countries, including Poland, Russia, and Latvia, restrict it due to its mild psychoactive compounds, so it's not universally unrestricted. Always check your local laws before selling, especially if labeling it as a consumable tea, since food and beverage regulations are usually stricter than those covering purely ornamental or aromatic products. If you're ever unsure, consult a local business attorney before making any health-related claims about the product, and keep your labeling conservative until you've confirmed exactly what's allowed in your area. This step is easy to skip when you're excited to start selling, but it's one of the cheapest and most important things you can do before your first listing goes live. Setting up your growing environment. Blue Lotus needs water, warmth, and full sun, 6 to 8 hours daily, plus warm, still water, ideally between 75 to 85 Fahrenheit. Moving water from a fountain or waterfall feature can stress the plant, so if your setup includes one, keep the lotus container in the calmest section away from any current. Garden ponds give roots room to spread and produce the most vigorous growth, making them the best long-term option if you already have, or plan to install, an outdoor pond. Large plastic tubs or half barrels, 20-30 gallons, are the easiest entry point for beginners, supporting 1 or 2 plants each, and can be added to one at a time as you expand rather than requiring a big upfront setup. Greenhouse tanks let serious growers control temperature year-round, dramatically increasing bloom cycles compared to outdoor growing in cooler climates, and are usually the setup that separates a hobby from a real production operation. Start with tubs. They're affordable and let you test the process before investing more. Many growers begin with just 2 or 3 tubs tucked along a fence line or on a sunny patio, and only expand once they know they can keep the plants healthy and actually sell what they harvest. Plant the tuber horizontally in aquatic soil, an inch or 2 deep, topped with gravel to keep the water clear. Within weeks, lily pads and then flower buds will appear, and the whole setup can be maintained with just a few minutes of attention each day. Caring for your plants. Feed with aquatic fertilizer tablets every 4 to 6 weeks. Avoiding regular garden fertilizer since aquatic-specific formulas release nutrients slowly without polluting the water. Keep algae in check by shading part of the water surface with lily pads and skimming as needed. Clear water means healthier roots and more consistent blooming. Watch for aphids and beetles, treating with an aquatic-safe insecticidal soap, and check each container individually since pests can spread quickly between tubs in warm weather. As plants mature, they'll produce offshoot tubers you can divide and replant, multiplying your plant count for free over each season, which is one of the biggest cost advantages of this business compared to most others. Harvesting the flowers. Each mature plant produces multiple blooms per season, typically opening in late afternoon and closing by morning as part of its natural pollination cycle. Harvest right as a flower opens for the best color and fragrance, cutting the stem close to the base with clean scissors. A tub with 1 or 2 plants can yield several blooms weekly at peak season. A larger setup with a dozen plants can yield dozens, and keeping a simple log of what you cut each week helps you spot your strongest producers over time. Useful information when deciding which tubers to divide the following season. Drying and processing. Air drying. Lay petals in a single layer on a mesh rack in a dark, ventilated room. away from direct sun for 5 to 10 days. This is the cheapest method and works well for smaller harvests, though drying time will vary depending on humidity in your area. Asterisk. Dehydrator method. Dry at 95 to 115 Fahrenheit for 12 to 24 hours, faster and more consistent once you're processing bigger harvests and need to keep up with regular orders. Many growers use air drying for decor-quality whole flowers, where slower drying preserves shape, and switch to a dehydrator for loose petals destined for tea blends, where speed and consistency matter more than preserving the flower's overall form. Properly dried petals keep their blue-violet color and a light floral scent. Over-dried petals turn brittle and lose fragrance, while under-dried ones risk mold in storage. Store finished product in airtight jars or mylar bags away from light and humidity. Properly stored, Blue Lotus keeps its quality for up to a year, giving you flexibility in how quickly you sell through each batch. Turning your harvest into sellable products, asterisk loose-dried flowers or petals, sold by the gram or ounce. The simplest product and the easiest starting point, asterisk tea blenderist, combining Blue Lotus with chamomile, lavender or rose for a curated higher-margin product, asterisk bath soak sachets, paired with Epsom salts, appealing to the wellness and self-care market, asterisk whole-dried flowers for decor or ritual use, sold at a premium, especially for large, well-preserved blooms, asterisk live tubers and starter plants, asterisk for other gardeners, especially in spring planting season. Tapping into a completely different customer base, offering a mix of these rather than just one, gives customers different entry points. Someone hesitant to buy a live tuber might start with a small bag of dried petals, then return later for higher-priced items once they trust your quality. Where and how to sell online marketplaces like Etsy reach buyers actively searching for botanical products. Good photos and a clear growing story help justify higher prices than generic imported listings, and a well-written product description explaining harvest and drying methods builds trust fast. Asterisk social media, Instagram, TikTok, works well since Blue Lotus is visually striking. Short videos of blooming, harvesting, and drying attract organic interest and build trust before someone ever places an order, and you can direct followers straight to an online store or a simple direct message ordering system to avoid marketplace fees. Wholesale. To local shops, herbal shops, tea houses, wellness studios, smoke shops. Build stable, recurring revenue once your output is consistent, since many small shop owners are actively looking for locally sourced botanical products they can market as unique to their store. Asterisk, farmers, markets, and wellness fairs let you sell directly, build a local following, and get real-time feedback on which products move best before you invest heavily in any one product line, and repeat customers from these events often become some of your most reliable online buyers later on. Breaking down the weekly profit, potential dried Blue Lotus typically sells for $20.40 per ounce on niche marketplaces, with premium whole flowers at $5.15 each depending on size and quality, and live tubers at $15.30 each in spring. When demand from pond gardeners peaks, a small setup, 6 to 10 mature plants, might realistically bring in a few $100s a week at peak season once you account for the time spent harvesting, drying, and packaging. Reaching a figure closer to $9,000 a week requires a much larger operation, a dedicated greenhouse or multiple ponds with dozens of blooming plants, steady wholesale accounts with several shops, an established online customer base ordering repeat batches, and additional tuber sales during planting season. That level of output typically takes months to years of reinvestment and propagation. It's the ceiling for a mature, multi-channel operation, not a starting point, so it's worth treating it as a long-term goal rather than an expectation for your first season. To put it another way, reaching that upper tier isn't about any single trick. It's about steadily compounding three things over multiple seasons: the number of mature plants you have through free propagation, the number of sales channels you're actively using, and the average price per unit you've earned through good branding and consistent quality. Common mistakes that kill profit: asterisk underpricing us based on generic imported rates instead of the value of fresh domestic small batch product, that customers are often willing to pay more for asterisk poor drying, leading to discolored, weak petals that sell for less or not at all, which is why getting the drying process right early protects your margins long-term. Asterisk neglecting water quality asterisk, which stunts growth, invites algae, and reduces how often plants bloom each week asterisk, relying on one sales channel, which leaves your income fragile if that marketplace or buyer relationship changes overnight, asterisk not reinvesting in propagation asterisk, buying only enough tubers for your current setup instead of dividing and replanting offshoots, which slows how fast your production can scale, asterisk skipping branding and packaging asterisk, since a plain unlabeled bag sells for far less than a product with clean packaging, and a short note about how it was grown and dried asterisk over expanding too fast, adding more containers than you can realistically maintain and harvest each week, which leads to missed blooms, wasted flowers, and burnout early in the process. Scaling from hobby to serious side business: most growers start with 1 or 2 tubs to learn the process, then list their first small batches online and gather early customer feedback. From there, they expand using their own propagated tubers rather than buying new stock, which keeps costs low while steadily increasing weekly harvest volume. Once output is consistent, adding local wholesale accounts helps create predictable, recurring revenue instead of relying purely on individual online orders. The final step for growers chasing the higher end of the income potential is usually investing in a greenhouse to control temperature year-round, removing seasonal limits, and allowing continuous production and sales throughout the entire year. At each stage, it helps to resist expanding everything at once. Growers who try to add new containers, launch wholesale, and build a full product line all in the same season often end up spread too thin. The ones who reach the higher income tiers tend to master one layer, reliable growing, then reliable drying, then a couple of solid sales channels, before adding the next. Final thoughts: Blue Lotus taps into a real, growing market across tea, wellness, and spiritual products, with a low barrier to entry, a tub of water, sunlight, and a starter tuber. The natural propagation of tubers means your initial investment can multiply season after season without major ongoing costs, which is part of why this business scales more efficiently than many other home-based ideas. The path to meaningful weekly income, whether a few $100s or a scaled operation approaching the thousands referenced in the title, comes down to consistent care, good drying technique, smart pricing, and selling across multiple channels rather than just one. If you're starting your own Blue Lotus project, begin small, master the growing and drying process first, and treat your early harvests as a learning phase before scaling toward serious weekly profit. Stay patient through the slower first season and let your tubers do the heavy lifting as your plant count grows year over year, and keep notes on what actually sells so you can double down on your best performing products rather than guessing each season. Thanks for watching. If this was useful, like the video and subscribe for more underrated plant-based business ideas you can start from home. Blue Lotus, or Nymphaea caerulea, is an Egyptian water lily that's quietly become one of the most underrated home business ideas out there. Growers cultivate it in backyard ponds, plastic tubs, or small greenhouses, and all it really needs is full sun and warm, still water to thrive. No farmland, no big investment, just a container of water and a starter tuber. The demand behind it comes from several directions. Herbal tea drinkers who use it as a calming nightly brew, aromatherapy and bath product makers who infuse it into oils and soaks, spiritual and meditation communities drawn to its Egyptian symbolism, specialty smoke shops that use it in herbal blends, and hobbyist pond gardeners who buy live tubers just for their beauty. That last group creates a whole separate income stream beyond dried flowers. It's legal to grow and sell in most countries, including the US, UK, Canada, and most of the EU, though a handful of countries like Poland and Russia restrict it, so checking local laws first is essential. Growing is simple. Plant the tuber in aquatic soil, feed it every few weeks, manage algae and pests, and harvest flowers as they bloom. Mature plants naturally produce offshoot tubers, letting your stock multiply for free each season. Once harvested, flowers get air-dried or dehydrated, then sold as loose petals, tea blends, bath soaks, decorative whole flowers, or live tubers through Etsy, social media, local wholesale, or farmers markets. A small setup might bring in a few $100s a week at peak season. Reaching thousands per week takes a much bigger, greenhouse-scale operation built over several seasons. That's the ceiling of a mature business, not where anyone starts.